As you have heard since morning, it has been a long journey that started with the dreams of many visionaries, professors, alumni, stakeholders, and a lot of government support. It was perhaps a lonely journey for many, as one entrepreneur said that in the sign video. Things have come a long way since then, but is entrepreneurship mainstream? And is it mainstream at a level that it becomes a significant part of economic development? Our next panel touches on this theme. So let's hear from the entrepreneurs about their journey and how they participate in or see entrepreneurship for economic development. I invite Professor Raj Jaswa to moderate the next panel. Professor Jaswa is a serial technology entrepreneur and led his companies to IPO level, the acid test that Mr. Gopalakrishnan talked about in this morning session. He's an active investor and entrepreneurship educator. He teaches at the DS School of Entrepreneurship and at IIT Bombay and also at IIT Gandhinagar. He is also on the global board of TIE. Please. I understand that our panelists will get a chance to introduce themselves and they have many other insightful things to share. So in the interest of time, I'll only make very brief introductions and invite you to join for the panel on stage. So I'll first invite Mr. Jagdish Moorjani, who has co-founded, who is the co-founder and CEO of Citius Tech Healthcare Technologies Private Limited. He has co-founded 2 successful companies, and Citius Tech was recently acquired by Barding Private Equity, giving it a unicorn status. Jagdish is an IIT Bombay alumnus. I'll invite Mr. Manoj Meena, co-founder and CEO, Atomberg Technologies Private Limited. He is a distinguished alumnus of IIT Bombay and also featured as one of the young CEOs in the countries in Forbes 30 under 30. Please. I'll invite Professor Shashikant Suryanarayan, founder and chairman, Sedimec Mechatronics Private Limited. He is a faculty member at IIT Bombay and also the recipient of the MIT Innovators Under 35 Award. Please, Mr. Vivek Goyal, co-founder and CEO of Play Shifu, graduate of Stanford Graduate School of Business. Vivek has had career that includes stints at eBay, P&G, and his own startup in Silicon Valley. So lots of relevant and direct experience on stage. We look forward to the discussion. All to you.
Okay, so first of all, I'm very happy to be invited to be the moderator for this panel because I feel that entrepreneurs don't change the economy. It's when the entrepreneur's brilliant idea becomes a company, and that too a sustainable company that grows year in, year out, and starts thriving across the local economy, and then over time, over the national economy, and then the global economy. When it finally thrives, now you are beginning to impact the economy. So what we are so lucky to have today is an opportunity to listen to the stories and, more important, the learnings about how 4 entrepreneurs actually succeeded. You know, no matter where you go in the world, you know, the number of people who start companies is huge and becoming even larger and larger, but such small number of them actually make the transition to building a real successful company, a business that is, and over time becomes a global corporation. So, you know, in a nutshell, you know, having now done it over 25 years, being an entrepreneur for 25 years in Silicon Valley, I was thinking like, you know, what is it that is stopping entrepreneurs from building successful companies? And what I realized is that there are skills in 3 different areas that an entrepreneur needs to have. And it's not, there is no academic program that teaches all of the skills in these 3 different areas. So what are these skills? Personal skills, management skills, and then business skills. There are 3 different skill areas, and no MBA, nothing will actually get all of them done. So quickly, personal skills is what I say PPP. Passion, persistence, and preparation. So these are the personal skills that you need. What are the management skills? These are skills of how to create a company which has the right management processes, something that is responsive to the market, results in fast product development, is competitive, it's a learning organization, and all of these are management skills. And finally, you have business skills, which is how do you create a project into something that results in a business, right? So understanding the business model and then understanding how to do business with real people and real customers is the challenge. So with that, what I'd like to do is have each of the people who have really taken their ideas and created companies talk about their journey, and in that journey itself, weave in some of the things either in the personal area, management level area, or in the business challenges, how they overcame a few challenges. Okay? Thank you. So start with you, Jagdish.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I be heard? Yeah, thank you. So very quickly, like was said, my name is Jagdish Murjani. I am an alumnus of IIT Bombay. I passed out a lot earlier than a lot of my younger colleagues here, way back in 1993. And I have essentially had 2 stints at entrepreneurship. So I co-founded a business process outsourcing company that was acquired by the Aditya Birla Group when it was about 1,000 people strong. And about 15 years back, after that company, I co-founded a healthcare technology company. The name of the company is Citius Tech. Today we are close to 4,000 people globally. We do about $200 million a year of revenues. And I think the most interesting part about the company is that we built the company by consuming no external primary capital at all. So I think that's unique about Citius Tech, because it was recently in some ways valued as a unicorn when it was acquired by Baring Private Equity. If I kind of look back at my journey as an entrepreneur, just some of the quick insights that I can think of sharing with this audience. And it might be a little different from what my colleagues will share, because this company which I am really talking about is predominantly a services company, and we will hear about a lot of other innovative companies in the product and in the manufacturing space. The 3 or 4 key points that I would like to make, which kind of really worked for me, are the following. The first is, I think I was very fortunate to be able to team up with colleagues who kind of came with a similar background, a similar vision. The co-founder of Citius Tech is my friend and business partner, whose name is Rizwan Quetta, and he himself is an alumnus of IIT Bombay. And when we co-founded the company, we were also very fortunate to be able to rope in another colleague to join us, who was also an alumnus of IIT Bombay, who came with very strong skills in the space where we were looking to set up our company, which is the domain of healthcare technology. So I think having the right team in place is absolutely critical, because in some ways, as you go through all of the thick and thin of things, it is that team which will really carry the company forward. And for those of us who are students in IIT, there is no place like campus to identify who your future friends and partners and business colleagues might be. The other thing which I think worked for us was identifying a space in healthcare technology which was a space with a lot of white spaces. And we essentially targeted a segment of the market. So we were competing with many of the larger IT services companies in India, but we found a space and a niche which was below the radar of these companies, because the scale of projects, opportunities, and services that we were targeting would have been below the radar for some of the larger companies. And the nature of the services was much more complex. So we essentially bet on complexity, and we bet on a slightly smaller scale. And then over time, as we kind of started delivering services to companies, what we found is that as we always put the customer first, always put the interests of the customer ahead of everything else, and just demonstrate all of that passion and perseverance when it comes to delivering really high quality services, we just found that we naturally attained a fairly fast rate of growth. So our CAGR over our existence would easily be north of 30 or 35%. At even the scale where we are today, we are growing at close to a 30% CAGR, even though we are about 4,000 of us in the company today. I think the last point that I want to make before I kind of hand it over to my colleagues is that we live in a space where I think technology just offers a tremendous set of opportunities. So if I look at the next 5 years to 10 years, right, I can easily say that these will be amongst the best years in the area of technology. And for us, identifying that right space, coming up with some really innovative solutions which served as the tip of the arrow, solutions to problems that were current, allowed us to get meetings with the right stakeholders, allowed us to reach senior people in the client organizations that we were targeting, all of which were very large global enterprises. And then once we were in there, right, in some ways really demonstrating differentiated services to grow, that's something which has really worked for us. Just the last 2 quick points I will make is that, as you build any company, right, then besides that initial founding team, just building the right DNA of the company, the early people that you hire, who in turn will help you hire more people. I know it is obvious, but the more attention that you pay to that can pay you very, very rich dividends. And the last point that I want to make is that I think, as you set up your companies, to the extent that you can run the companies ethically, in accordance with your own value system, in accordance with the laws of the land, in accordance with the laws of the jurisdictions that you operate in, not only will it allow you to in some ways sleep more peacefully, but I think it will also allow you to use your entire energy and your creativity to focus on creating value through innovation and through business, instead of having to worry about things that you should not have to worry about otherwise. So these are some of my kind of quick inputs, and with that I can hand it over. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jagdish. So my name is Manoj Meena. I'm also alumnus IIT Bombay. I graduated in 2011. I did my BTech MTech integrated program with electrical. So very initial days, I was very much excited in entrepreneurship, and in the journey, Sign has helped us a lot. We got incubated in Sign during early days, but there was no idea like what to start. And eventually, we ended up in a lot of failures. We failed miserably in 4 to 5 ideas. So the journey continued from 2011 to 2015. Finally, we were looking into energy efficiency space, like what we could do in energy efficiency space. Today, if you see, India is an energy deficient country, and almost 22% people don't have adequate access to electricity, especially in rural India and tier 2 cities. Load shedding, power cuts are common problem, and people are working on renewable energies, embracing solar, but that is sources of energy generation. So my thought was energy saving is more important than energy generation. So with this philosophy, I started my basic groundwork, how Indian households works. And I was very fascinated about the revolution of LEDs, the way LEDs were revolutionizing lighting industry in terms of energy saving. But my insights from the study told me that LEDs lighting is not the most energy hungry appliance or demand in Indian households. You hardly use electricity for lighting your lights or bulbs for few hours. It is mainly ceiling fans. Ceiling fans runs for more than 15 to 20 hours a day, and they consume too much power, like 70 to 80 watts is the power consumption of an ordinary ceiling fan. And none of the company, the larger incumbents, were actually working on technologies. So we saw there an opportunity, and we made our super energy efficient motor to run our ceiling fans. And we ended up in making wonderful product that consumes only 28 watts of power. So 28 watts is, just to do some basic mathematics, 28 watts is 1/3 in terms of power consumption of your regular ceiling fans. So you could run 3 ceiling fans of Atomberg company in the same power which your regular ceiling fan consumes. So there was a wonderful impact on energy saving. We started selling the product in 2016. And in last 3 years, we saw wonderful demand coming from the market. And eventually, we ended up in selling more than 6 lakh units in last 3 years. And these 6 lakh units, ceiling fans are running across India. Many fans we have also shipped to our IIT campus. Also, we have shipped in some of the hostels. It is there on many railway platforms, including Mumbai Central Railway, Tirupati Railway, Jaipur. So now we have reached out to many places in ceiling fan. Together, these ceiling fans are contributing a saving of 100 gigawatt hours energy, which is sufficient to power crores of families in India. Then, I would like to share some of the challenges we faced, because product was wonderful, but we had no clue how we are going to sell, how we are going to market the product. And it is a mass manufacturing product. We are today manufacturing 50 to 60,000 units a month. And we were clueless how we are going to manufacture in 2016. So that was the first challenge we faced. We set up a manufacturing facility in Navi Mumbai. But thing is, also having discussion with Shashi today, manufacturing is something which people are moving away. They are shying away from manufacturing, and they believe that it is very difficult. But it's not very difficult. It is not a challenging thing. And when we got into it, you will find a lot of good partners in India. This ecosystem is evolving, and we need to evolve manufacturing ecosystem. And we are happy to partner with more than 40 to 50 partners in India who are doing a lot of component manufacturing for us. Final assembly we are doing. So that way, we are also boosting our manufacturing ecosystem, which is going to be a backbone of incoming growth curve for our GDP. So product companies are fascinating. Finally, we have ended up in creating employment for 450 people, which are working with Atomberg with us. And most exciting part is that we are consumer-facing company today. We are directly interacting with consumers like us, and we are trying to understand their problems. And with technologies, we are able to, bring them better experience. And we believe that people, a regular consumer, deserve better product. And if technology is there, we should put our energy and bring it to the people. That is the real fun. And we are able to work on aerodynamics, silent and super energy efficient motors. And we are also expanding our technology, not limiting to ceiling fan, but also now pedestal fan, wall mount fans. And motors are everywhere. In most of your home appliances, motors are there. So now we are also exploring opportunities in mixer grinders, air coolers, air conditioners. And in fact, electric vehicle companies also are coming to us for some of the partnership on motor manufacturing. So we see a wonderful future. Journey was a little tough, but you will find ways. And talking about our investment journey, it was not very easy for us, because many of the investors are not very much aligned towards hardware companies in India. Fortunately, we found wonderful investors, and today one of our investors is here. Actually, he is part of investor panel discussion today, Parampara Capital. So they had faith on technology company like us back in 2016. And that's how we have evolved. So thing is, you will find good people, good network, and there is nothing to worry in failures. You should fail. Failure is fun. Thank you.
My name is Shashikant. I've been a faculty member here for about 15, 16 years now. About a decade or so back, I started a company with ex-students of mine, now ex-students and then students of mine. So this company's name is Sedimac, and it is a controls company. For those of you who are not familiar with controllers, so you can, this picture probably could give you a view of it. So think of motherboards of PCs, of the older PCs. So those sort of things are the controllers, with a microprocessor sitting there which has some code that executes something. So we build controllers that look like that and sell to the market. But more importantly, the controls company that has gotten built from day one and continues to exist till today, the idea was to build world-first propositions. Some way of doing something in control technology that stands out as the best way of doing it. Okay, so we sort of quixotically started off on this journey because it's very difficult to do from a fairly poor ecosystem for technology like in India. But the journey has been great. The company has survived for 10 years, has about 250 crores in revenues. So that's about 30 to 40 million dollars in revenue today. It's been doubling since inception. I think the first year of revenue was something like 20 lakh. So it's about 1,000 times it's grown over the last 10 years. The company has about 250 employees, maybe 270 now, and about 100 of them are engineers, and maybe 30 to 40 of them at any given point in time are from the IITs. In fact, most of our significant stuff actually have been built by IIT Bombay students. So which is something of both pride as well as sort of answers an existential question whether I'm doing anything useful here at all or not. So I am convinced that you can build quality technology by employing as well as by partnering with IIT students. And we continue to think of them as the builders of the company that we are building. About challenges, maybe it slipped through. So a couple of things that we have ended up doing. So we operate in a space called powertrain controls. Powertrains are anything between the point of production of power to its consumption. So in vehicles, it includes, if it's an IC engine powered vehicle, all the way from the engine to the wheels. In an electric vehicle, all the way from the batteries to the wheels. All the components in between constitute the powertrain. Powertrains are also used in many other power equipment devices, which include construction equipment, vehicles, tractors, etc., generators all over the place. So we build engine and motor controls. So one of the things that we have ended up building for small vehicles, two-wheelers, is the best way of putting spark. So this is something that I was working in my lab between maybe 2004 to 2006 or 7. And which took shape as a real technology in the company that I founded, and now it is used in about 20 million vehicles around in India. About 1/3 of the vehicles manufactured today use that technology for sparking. So that's one of the successes, and the other bet that we are going after right now is a traction control technology. It's a motor control technology, best way of commutating brushless motors. Okay. Best way as in globally, the best way. So for building these sort of propositions, first you have to have the gumption, okay, that you can actually do it, which I think is the toughest part, because like most people in this audience would also think that, yeah, right, I mean, people have been working on it for ages. Why did the Siemens not do it, ABB not do it, or Bosch not do it, or right? So the gumption is the most crucial part. Second, you have to have partners who are equally stupid to work with you, or equally bold to work with you. Third, you need to have an investment ecosystem, which is absent in India even today for this kind of bet. So these are common challenges, but the good part here is that at least if you operate on something really fundamental way of doing something the best way, then usually you have scale, and usually you are not bound by geography. So for example, our motor controls technology right now is relevant in India and let's say two-wheelers, which is a very big market. It is also relevant pretty much everywhere in the world. Okay? So if you are able to build fundamental technology propositions, the opportunity for making a big impact across the globe actually is there for you to tap, and then of course it has to have many other things to fall into place for you to be the winner. So the challenges have been many, but the journey has been great. Just alluding to the question here on whether entrepreneurship has become mainstream in India. Yeah, entrepreneurship of the kind that I'm doing, surely not. But I think there is a lot more, from the capital angle, a lot more available for talent to prosper in India than it was 20 years back when it was all held up by a very few set of people. That has changed, but I don't know if any significant entrepreneurship along the lines of what I have been party to is happening.
Hi everyone, I'm Vivek. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Play Shifu. I graduated from IIT Kharagpur in 2008 and then worked with Procter & Gamble for 3 years before doing my MBA from Stanford. and then spending a couple of years in the Valley. For first year, I tried my own startup, and then second year worked with eBay to launch one of their newer innovative products in the market across US as a product manager. And post that, relocated back to India in 2016, late 17, where joined hands with Dinesh, who was my IIT Kharagpur batchmate, to start Play Shifu. Both of us were parents at that point in time with toddlers, and something that both of us personally felt was this Gen Z generation, which is kids who are in between age group of 2 to 10 right now, are growing up very, very differently than how we grew up. They have a lot of exposure to screens, which is unavoidable, and that is changing their behavior, both in positive ways and negative ways. We thought, can we do something about it? Because specifically in India, we could not see ways to get kids interacting in the right manner and developing their skills as far as critical thinking is concerned, logical reasoning, basic foundational skills like alphabets and numbers was not built in the right fashion as it should have been. And we started ideating, and what we learned was this is a global phenomenon. The kids all over the world are going through the same phase, and parents and teachers are looking for ways to get kids more playing in a fashion that they're learning, and playing with movement involved, with tactile skills involved, rather than just a screen in which they're swiping. So we started Play Shifu, and the first product that we launched was around 2.5 years ago with the global focus in mind. So when we developed the first product, which was Orboot, it's an AR globe, we kept the audience all over the world in mind. We've had a phenomenal success journey since then. We've launched 3 different platforms, all augmented reality-based interactions. So what we really do is we create physical tactile experiences like toys, which are manipulatives that kids can move around, play with. But we've built technologies that can learn what kids are doing and track how they're doing it using cameras on their existing devices. So be it a smartphone, which is as old as 2013, or a tablet, which is iPad or an Android device, they can keep it there. And then when they're playing with the manipulatives, the iPad recognizes what they're doing, and the gameplay in the iPad changes. So they're able to manipulate the gameplay without touching the screen, and actually playing with things like Lego blocks, which is the best of the both worlds. They're involving themselves in motor skills, which are very critical early on, and the iPad actually behaves as an enabler, as an encouraging factor, because they love the digital medium and the richness that it brings. So right now we are in about 500,000 houses all across the world, and we have gone across 7 different foundational skills that kids build. We are present in more than 2,000 schools, where teachers are passionately using our tools as a supplement to the classroom teaching. And we see next 10 foundational skills that we can develop creative experiences on with new platforms that we're launching in the next couple of years. Talking about journey, we have had phenomenal support from our investors early on. 2 of our investors are present here. Parampara kind of invested in us early on, and then Inventus just invested in last year in a growth phase. And what we have learned is building a brand, specifically a consumer brand, which is global in nature, is tough, but it is not impossible. And we have seen entrepreneurs solving a lot of local problems, which absolutely drives the economy. But there is also merit in seeing whether you can develop products that can solve global problems and create a brand out of them, specifically for the consumer use case. And there are challenges, but it is with the online going truly global. For example, we have been half of our business is online, and we've been able to build our brand on our own website, on Amazon in 7 different countries, and in local marketplaces in 7 different countries. And we've been able to sell all of that by sitting out of India, and we manufacture everything in India also. So it's building out of India and then shipping, logistics around it. How do you advertise your brand? How do you create a brand online in a presence where it's not just a product that parents and teachers are buying, it's also they're getting associated with the brand, is something that is possible sitting out of India and creating. And that's true value that you're creating. And to answer the question that Professor asked, yes, if you continue down this route and create brands that can truly sit in the mindset of parents and teachers worldwide, that will create true value in the system.
Phenomenal. So I think, what we've got is 4 amazing, successful entrepreneurs in terms of people who have actually built companies. Besides just the employees that they've got 4,000 and 450 and 250 and how many? 150. I think there's a supply chain behind them of suppliers and customers and resellers and so on. So in a sense, like, an entrepreneur is not just affecting the employees that he has, but also probably 10 times more people that feed into that one company. The other thing that's amazing about what we have seen among these 4 entrepreneurs, totally different technology areas, totally different technical skill sets, but a lot of technology coming from IITians, and just a comfort level with all the different newly emerged marketing channels like e-commerce, online, and so on. It's that ability to pretty much be at the cutting edge on all fronts of building your company. And that is something that is required for any entrepreneur these days, that they have to be comfortable with the evolving business marketplace. So I'm just going to open it up because I know we are running on a tight schedule given how phenomenal speakers we've got here. So I'm just going to open it up and give people a chance to ask questions directly. So, yep. So keep your questions down to just one issue and as crisply as you can.
Hi, my name is Ramdas, founder of 2 companies now, incubated at IIT Bombay. So one question, and for all of you, have you come across this phrase of a lifestyle business versus investable business or a VC, friendly business? Because I have come across this a few times from very, very serious, VCs whom I thought would like our kind of, business. So if you have heard this, if you have come across this, what are your thoughts on that?
Maybe I'll just ask one person to answer because, just to keep it crisp. So maybe since, why don't you answer that question, Manoj?
Yeah, sure. So I think to address this question, I think we have different types of VCs available, and all VCs have their own philosophy and theory to invest. Some would be more interested in consumer focusing, some would be more interested in energy related or B2B. So I think like we reached out when we were raising fund, we reached out more than 20 VCs, different VCs, and we got different answers. And in the whole process, a lot of time also, and a lot of energy also went away. But I think you can find good VCs which are more, more tuned about your area. So in our case, we were able to get into Parampara Capital because at that time it was important for us to demonstrate technology, because we were a new company and we were heading to compete with the giants which are already established in the market. So and good part is online is a new platform which has came up, and if you have differentiating product, you can demonstrate your technology. So some of the VCs would be interested in that part. Like if you are able to demonstrate your technology, once you are able to bring the traction on the table, then you can reach out the larger VCs also later on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, the next question, please. Yeah. Louder. Yeah, we can.
Sure. So I think the core of the question is, first, how do you understand the customer which is not close by, right? Somebody who you can't just go and survey and see a prototype using. which is very essential to the MVP stage of a company where you build something and how do you validate whether this is something you want to kind of scale with. And that's a tough question for every kind of individual product. You have to find your journey. For us, what we figured out was there was a segment of kids in metros in India who 100% resembled kids in the West. And how do you find these pockets? How do you make them as your kind of testing beds, but also kind of give to that community so that they engage with your early prototypes? And the 6 months that we spent here in around 6 different schools and 6 different societies in Bangalore who had these kids was invaluable to the first product that we made. But to the second part of your question, after you have launched your product, after finding out that you're solving your need, many of these aspects of the business, there's so many solutions available to simplify the process. For example, the customer care that you solve, there's so many solutions that are automatically. We used AI chat a lot to answer most of our questions. So after the first 1,000 questions that we received, we were able to run the engine on that and easily find out what are the immediate answers, and only around 5% of the questions that require us to kind of intervene. Otherwise, it's mostly answerable. So those are the things that you kind of do use because the ecosystem has developed a lot. But there are things like shipping the product and making sure it reaches in time, which you do figure out. It's not rocket science and it's not difficult to figure out, and it should not deter you from trying to explore to create a business like this, because those things are solvable and I think you'll be able to figure it out.
Great, thank you.
Hi, this is Priyanka. I am into robotics. It's a edtech company. So this question was for Vivek. Partly it has been answered. I wanted to know how complicated or how easy the market is today. I mean, because the parents do not have that kind of exposure. So how you'll define this kind of market?
It is actually not that isolated. Parents are a lot more aware these days than the parents 20 years ago, because of the advent of social media. They see a lot. So all of them subscribe to a lot of parenting channels, which keeps on giving them advice of the right things and the wrong things that kids should be doing and what they need to be alert of. So parents are a lot more aware of what kid has to do, but that doesn't solve the problem that kid actually doesn't come to them and directly tell them what they need or what they doesn't. That is still a gap that parents have to solve. So I feel anything that right now what we've seen in the market is anything that solves that problem of the connect between the parent and the kid is a big winner, because it gives them parents the visibility of what kid is doing, how their brains are growing. And any data around that the parents get, they are absolutely bold over that. And if you can create that connect with any product that you make, it's a great place to be in right now.
Great.
Hello. Yes, we are a small startup actually. We develop a product also. We are a small startup. We develop a product prototype also. We have filed a patent also, but somehow it's a novelty and incremental novelty is there. So have you ever thought of you may be having your patents also, you are a product company. So have you ever worried about some company will come in future and then the sue you and against infringement kind of thing. So we are also right now worried about it basically.
Don't worry about that in India, first of all. Okay, so if you're worried about patents, you're worried about the wrong things as a small company. Patents are primarily used as tools by large companies, and primarily in the West, those growing here as well, to fight against each other, put a bunch of lawyers who will fight against them, right? Small companies should not be worried about this, right? In fact, it's the other way around. The bigger companies who may be infringing on something that you would have done, they may be more worried. Nobody really cares about you. So you focus on building something that people will buy and don't focus on patents.
Yeah, maybe the question should be how do you handle people that try to enter your business by copying your idea, right? So maybe we can have Jagdish give an answer to that.
Sure. At least as far as my own business was concerned, what we were doing was fairly distinctive, and it was just based on a very high degree of knowledge and specialization. And therefore, the ability for someone to come in and, in some ways copy what we were doing, naturally became limited. So I've really not had to deal with that. Although I did deal with it in the context of my, first business, which was a BPO business. And that business actually, the industry became pretty big pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And there were lots of companies which mushroomed. And that was a company which was focused more on larger scale and lower value.
Yes.
And then looking at that experience, right, the second time round, as I got together with a couple of my colleagues, what we figured is that we need to find problems to solve which are complex. And in some ways, whatever were the intellectual differentiators that we had, we could really put those to use in those spaces. I think, again, no matter what you build, there could always be imitations. And in some ways, building a brand, making sure that you have good word of mouth publicity, making sure you build a good product. In some ways, a lot of them are the obvious things. But I feel that as you start to build a brand and as you start to build awareness, it certainly creates the natural moat which will be harder and harder for the competition to kind of, to deal with. So, yeah.
Very good point. Yes.
So 2 points. I was also going to ask about the patent, but I think I don't agree with you, Shikha. We must protect our IP. It's a must. Whether somebody infringes it and you go after them or not, that's a different issue. But if there is a new idea and new IP is created, it should be protected. That's first. Secondly, a general question to all of you. What is the chance of IPOs? We talked about IPOs in the morning. We'd like to see a company from Sign which will have an IPO soon. Maybe all 4 of you. Give me an idea.
So let me give a 2-minute on the IPO thing. So, the first 2 companies that I started, we could take them public. Took them both public on the NASDAQ in the US. First one hit a $400 million valuation. Second one hit a $5 billion valuation. So, in my opinion, there is really nothing stopping a company or a startup from going public. But the challenge is that you have to start the company and do everything right in order for it to become IPOable. There is a tremendous amount of due diligence that happens before any Securities and Exchange Organization in any country will give you the right to sell shares to people who don't understand your business, right? To the individual shareholder. So they are protecting the individual shareholder from people that might manipulate the numbers and so on. So the company has to be built so that it's audited from day one. The company has to be built so that there is no things like bribery and corruption, and all of those things are just not there in the company. So those are the things that entrepreneur has to pay particular attention to, because otherwise no investment banker you won't pass the due diligence, right? So besides creating something that's a good product, that can keep growing, the market, etc., there is also an ethical aspect that I think Jagdish talked about. That ethical aspect is something that entrepreneurs have to pay attention to from day one.
Yeah, excellent point. So therefore, taking a cue from what you said, Raj, you said 3 things. The fourth can be build a company which is IPOable, as you said. On an ethical issue should be, so I think the fourth aspect of ethics should be a highly important point in
highly important.
Company.
And I think people should realize that having a public company gives so much more flexibility to do things that an entrepreneur cannot do. Because now, in order to raise money, you just print more of your own stock.
Right.
And you can just use it to buy companies.
Absolutely.
And you can diversify. There are so many new strategies, business growth strategies that can happen if you have the ability to be a public company, right? So that is definitely an aspiration that I think all entrepreneurs should have, rather than just doing an M&A, which is a nice, safe exit. But IPO gives you amazing amount of brand equity, and it takes your company to another level.
So a very quick related question. So IPO is one issue, but the second is getting acquired.
Yes.
A lot of companies like Flipkart got acquired.
Yep.
Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Because now, I'll just give you an example. Flipkart got acquired, and in one of the talks, somebody mentioned that, look, you got acquired, you're no longer an Indian company. Where is the pride in India? Indian company. So any thoughts on that?
Well, I think ultimately we want to create companies of scale, because a company of scale can have a tangible impact on the economy. And when Walmart comes and takes over Flipkart, I think there is some massive scale that's going to happen. And I think everybody's a winner. Obviously, the Flipkart investors, founders, employees are winners. But I think the Indian economy is also a winner when somebody like Walmart comes and takes over. I think in terms of, it would be nice if the government had the gumption to protect companies in India till they are ready to become big global public companies. China obviously does it, because once it sees a specific industry that they want to have a Chinese footprint on, like in Baidu, in Alibaba, in Huawei, what they do is they create a moat around that particular industry itself till the Chinese company is so big locally that it can then flourish on a global basis. So in India, we have not taken that approach, in my opinion. We have let everybody fight it out as though it is, and the best will survive. So that is the approach we have taken. I don't think, in my mind, I've made up whether one is better than the other, because there are prices to pay when you have, when you're protecting industry also. So anyway, thank you. Any other questions before?
Couple of questions.
Okay, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. My question is to Jagdish. Congratulations on building a phenomenally global business, you, Bimal, and everybody else. You had bootstrapped the business for a larger part of life, subsequently raised funding from external investors. What is the one fundraising advice that you would want to give to any entrepreneur?
I think it's a very, very important question that you bring up. And I think there are just kind of 2 points that I will make. So if I go back to my own example, if I look at Citius Tech, right, like you correctly said, in some ways we just ran the company on our own steam for the longest time. And even when we raised capital the first time, about 5 years back, it was not a primary raise. It was essentially what was a secondary raise. So we pretty much preserved the entire equity value of the company for a large part of the evolution. So I think as entrepreneurs are essentially looking to raise capital, there are 2 things to keep in mind. That capital comes at a very, very high cost. And it comes at a very high equity cost. So today, right, as an entrepreneur, if you start a company in India, you will pay a tax of about 25%. You will be left with about 75 rupees out of 100 rupees of your profits. If you want to dividend that 75 rupees to yourself, you will end up paying about 40 rupees more by way of taxes. When you add that up, right, your effective tax rate is now close to 60 rupees on 100 rupees of your profits. When you are going to bring equity into the company, you are in some ways giving away a lot of your own wealth creation opportunity fairly early. You do a seed round, you do a Series A round, you do a Series B round. There are a couple of founders, and before you know it, right, in some ways you are left with, a very small part of the equity. So I think making that right trade-off of the equity that you want to, raise versus the benefits that it will give you is very important. There is almost a certain glamour associated with saying, hey, I went out there and I raised capital and I got investors. But if you can bootstrap, depending on whatever the business model is, it will pay you kind of rich long-term dividends. The second point that I want to raise, right, is that you have to be very careful of the terms which investors put on the table. You might have an investor who gives you a pre-money valuation, I'm just making a number up, of $5 million, which is a pure play equity valuation. You might have an investor who gives you a pre-money valuation of $10 million, but it comes with all kinds of liquidation preferences, anti-dilution rights, preferred return rights, etc. And both of those terms are very different. So as, funny as it may sound, right, besides being an engineer from IIT, I earned the silver medal, I got a fellowship from MIT, I also happen to have a degree in law. because I'm fond of studying and learning. And that degree in law was immensely useful when I was kind of dealing with investors. Fortunately, I've had a terrific run with all of the investors that I have personally partnered with. All of them have been just best-in-class investors, and they've become, the best of friends with us. But I think paying attention to the fine print on the term sheet, paying attention to the fine print on the shareholders' agreement is very important, and you should get the right legal and structuring advice. And there are lots of very, very good firms which can provide that in a cost-effective way. And the last point I will make is that for those of you who are going to start your companies, reach out to people who've done that, kind of engage with them. There is a lot of learning that you will get, and you will get a lot of insight in terms of what are best practices when, handling investment. Yeah.
I think the session has been very interesting, but we are between everyone and their lunch, so we need to wrap up. It has just, I think, even gained much more, interesting flow towards the end, turned into very similar to a mentoring session almost. Very interesting strategic advice has come out. Thank you all for the candid session and opening about your journeys. I'd like to invite some of our budding entrepreneurs to thank the panelists with a small token of appreciation, some small gifts. So I'll invite Sukanya to hand over the gift to Mr. Vivek. Please don't run away. We have some important announcements to make also for entrepreneurs. Abhinav, please hand over the gift to Professor Sunil. Shivam. Please present a gift to Mr. Manoj Meena. Prakhar. Please present a gift to Mr. Jagdish Murjani. Okay. Prakhar, one more to Professor Jaswa. So these guys have their posters and stalls outside. We have Sukanya, who is doing a bioplastic. She has made. Please, you may gather for a group photo. We have Prakhar, who has a poster on TMOS, which is providing daily delivery, intracity daily delivery to e-commerce and small businesses. We have Apply AI from Shivam. They are helping companies hire best talents from universities, Apply AI. And Abhinav from AIRTH Earth, which has developed a filter-less air purifier, which is self-cleaning as well. One important announcement for entrepreneurs. As discussed, thank you all. Please, a big round of applause to the panelists. As discussed in the earlier panel before this one, solving the problem of procurement in government, Maharashtra State Innovation Society, a government of Maharashtra entity, has been running Maharashtra Startup Week for past 2 years. Winners are awarded government work order of rupees 15 lakhs each. The applications are open for third edition of Startup Week. Startups can apply at www.msins.in, and the deadline is by the end of Feb. So we'll break for lunch now and assemble again at 2 p.m. here. Lunch is available on first floor and second floor. Please also visit the stalls on ground floor and posters on first floor. Stay hydrated. Water dispensers are around you. You can fill up your bottles. Tweet using the hashtag dialogue with stakeholders.